Okay, I have to ask, you guys can hear me, right? Okay. My name is Chris Andrews. I want to thank the Gateway Republicans Club for inviting us here tonight. I am the current state delegate for the 97th district, and I am running for re-election. I was also honored to be elected to be the chairman of the West Virginia Freedom Caucus on this past session. I don't have a primary opponent this time. But I do have a general opponent, so I will be asking for your support come November because I'm one of those very few somewhat purplish districts in West Virginia. Now, however, if I want to sleep in my bed tonight and not on the sofa, I have to say my wife is home with a sick daughter, but she's running for state executive committee, and her and Kathy Winkler are running together as a team. So please support them. You know, I could talk a lot about the session, how I voted. I think most of you guys know me. I'm pretty open about the way I vote and talk about things. The fact that I did receive a 100% score from the Freedom Index for a lifetime voting in line with the Constitution on every single vote. I also received 100% on the Liberty Index. So I'm pretty proud of that score as well. But I want to talk about something a little bit different tonight. Something different. I don't want to talk about myself. I want to talk about what happened just across the border in Virginia and why this primary is so important to West Virginia. You see, the primary in West Virginia is vital. The primary is when, in most districts, you decide who goes to Charleston. And if we don't get the primary right, nothing else we do will fix it. You know, the question you have to ask yourself when you're voting in the primary, are we voting for a conservative fighter, someone who will go down there and fight against the pressure, sometimes against leadership, or someone with just an R beside their name? Because we really do decide at the primary in West Virginia, are we sending a fighter or a placeholder? Now, look at what happened to Virginia. Virginia was a conservative state. 10 years ago, they had 64 seats in the House of Delegates. 7 out of the 11 congressmen were Republican in Virginia. But in their primary processes, we Republicans got elected time and time and time again. And once elected, they jacked up taxes. They passed the largest increase of taxes in state history with a Republican legislature and a Republican governor. Republicans in the legislature killed constitutional carry. Republicans in the legislature killed life and conception. Republican voters saw this, and they became very discouraged. They started saying, how many people's heard? There's no difference between the two parties. And they started saying that. They started not showing up because their enthusiasm was down. They were electing what they thought were champions for freedom and conservative principles, and they were voting the opposite when they got to Richmond. And what happened? They didn't show up. Democrats won. And we see the mess that is Virginia today. I mean, they are gutting the Second Amendment. They're increasing taxes. They just forced through, well, the court system's kind of holding it up right now, but they forced trying to redistrict everything so Fairfax controls all of Virginia. Is that the type of thing we want to have happen in West Virginia? You know, because Virginia didn't fall overnight. It lost when Republicans stopped acting like Republicans. Unfortunately, at times in the legislature, we're seeing the same pattern in West Virginia. Candidates are running as Republicans who say the right thing on the campaign. They always come out and tell you how conservative they are and how hard they're going to fight, and then they get down to the Capitol. And they're not, in many cases, pro-Second Amendment. They're not, in many cases, pro-life. They're not for reducing taxes. They talk about things like compromise, getting along, playing for the team, right? Cutting deals and backing down. Often you see them voting for things like bigger budgets. They grow government. They protect the system and those that benefit from it through cronyism. They undermine conservative principles just to go along to get along. And I will say, in the House of Delegates, there are undocumented Democrats running the House of Delegates right now. So, you don't need to elect a Democrat if you have a politician who just votes like them, okay? It happens, this causes intense damage to the Republican base. The voters, again, they conclude there's no difference whether we elect a Democrat or we elect a Republican. They stop showing up. That's how a state flips without people even realizing it. And West Virginia is in a very precarious position. On an average big turnout election statewide, you get about 600,000 voters, give or change a little bit, right? There's one county in Virginia, Loudoun, which has just that many residents almost, okay? It wouldn't take many moving here to change things. Because these undocumented Democrats don't just vote wrong, they break the trust with the voters. So we don't need more politicians in West Virginia. We need fighters. We need people that vote the exact same way they campaign. Those who stand firm when they're under pressure. They don't cave to leadership, they don't cave to lobbyists, and sometimes that means voting by yourself. I've done that a few times. But when you do that, you inspire the Republican voters. They see somebody actually out there fighting, and they get inspired, and they show up. They get engaged, because you have to fight, and you have to stand to keep the voters showing up at the polls, or what happened in Virginia could very much happen here. A lot of people say the big difference between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party is simply this. When the Democrats get power, they use it. They pass things like Obamacare. They pass things like gun control. But when the Republicans get power, they're just worried about holding on to the ball. That has to change. Because if we get it wrong in this primary, bigger government continues to grow. Spending continues to grow, and the inflation that all of our constituents and all of our neighbors are suffering under. I often joke, it's funny, I can lift $200 worth of groceries with one hand now, right? And inflation is directly linked to the amount of spending government does. But a watered-down Republican Party is what turns a state blue. So it's very important you show up on May 12th and elect fighters, not followers. Don't rely on the ads or the mailers. We're probably, every time I go to my mailbox, I get about 100, I think, at this point, okay? Look at the records. Actually spend time seeing how your delegates and your state senators voted, because that's what matters. It isn't what they say, it's whether they hit the red or the green button. So Virginia is a real warning to us. West Virginia is starting to head that way. We're about a decade behind Virginia right now. And the left doesn't have to win outright. They just need us to nominate the wrong people. So I'm going to ask you to choose fighters on May 12th. I'm going to ask you to choose conviction on May 12th. And let's keep West Virginia truly conservative, make it a shining light for freedom, and stop the blue horde from coming here. Thank you. God bless.